This week, the FBI executed a search warrant on a Georgia County election center, seizing ballots, voter rolls, and digital election data from the 2020 election. Do you remember that one? The one where President Trump had a public meltdown after losing to Joe Biden? The election that's already over, by the way, not an active one, none of that. And days earlier, before that, in Minnesota, Trump's attorney general demanded voter rolls during an ICE surge in order to calm down the ICE activity in the area. Different states, different agencies, but the exact same message. Elections are now federal crime scenes. ProPublica reports FBI's search of Georgia Election Center is dangerous, experts warn. The search warrant, which sought 2020 election ballots, tabulator date tapes, digital data, and voter rolls from Fulton County, marked what experts described as a significant escalation in President Donald Trump's breaking of democratic norms. When the FBI executed a warrant on Wednesday to seize records from the 2020 presidential vote in Fulton County, Georgia, it marked both an extraordinary event in the history of American elections and a significant escalation in President Donald Trump's breaking of democratic norms, several legal experts said. Trump has long claimed, without evidence, that the 2020 election was stolen from him and blamed Georgia in particular for his loss to Joe Biden. After the election, he famously made a call pressuring the Secretary of State to find him enough votes to win. About a week ago, in a speech at the World Economic Forum, Trump once again called the 2020 election rigged and promised people will soon be prosecuted for what they did. Mo Ivory, a Democratic Fulton County commissioner, arrived at the scene shortly after the FBI agents and said that once an error on the warrant was corrected, they backed up lines of trucks to the election warehouse and spent hours carting away boxes of ballots and other materials. The search began in the morning and was still going well past nightfall. This is not legitimate. This is Donald Trump's obsession with losing the 2020 election, Ivory said. This is his way to sow doubt Fulton County doesn't hold proper elections. In the immediate aftermath of the election, Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, accused election workers of rigging the vote with suitcases of ballots in his arguments to overturn the election, claims that were quickly debunked and for which he lost a nearly $150 million defamation lawsuit brought by two of the workers. I love to see justice. When the justice system works in action, you can't help but smile. It rarely does. So the warrant claims from Trump's administration is saying that this all may be evidence of election related crimes. But the biggest problem is Georgia's 2020 elections have already been counted, recounted, audited, litigated, and certified multiple times. We have seen dozens of court cases where the Trump administration has tried to claim election rigging that have failed. And those court cases oftentimes were championed by Republican judges, judges appointed by Republicans. Why would it make sense for any Republican judge to hide the crimes of a Democratic conspiracy to steal the election? If we stole the election in 2020, why couldn't Democrats steal the election in 2024? None of it makes sense. There is no unresolved case here. There's no new evidence, which obviously raises the question, why is the FBI looking at this? Trump is not shy about what he wants the results to be. He's not waiting until the evidence presents itself before he makes a conclusion. He's already made the conclusion, and it's that Trump won big, crooked election. This is the president of the United States, just to remind you of the incredible prose and rhetoric and syntax of this great leader. Trump won big, crooked election. That is the conclusion that he's made. So, just to remind you of what critical thinking is, typically it's when you observe all of the evidence that's presented in front of you and you make a conclusion based on said evidence. Trump is doing the exact opposite of that. He knows he won the 2020 election. There's not a doubt in his mind that he won. And now they are investigating Fulton County to actually get the evidence to back up the conclusion that he's already made. Do you see that's completely working in reverse? Some would call that psychopathic thinking. Trump has targeted Georgia relentlessly since 2020. You can remember he pressured state officials to find just 11,000 votes. That's all he needed to win. That's what he demanded from the Secretary of State. He filed more than 60 lawsuits nationwide. All of them failed. Not a single one did he win, even those that were judges that he appointed himself. Judges that, under their legacy, say appointed by President Donald Trump, those federal judges all said, hey, there's actually nothing here. And we know that if we just openly lie to the American people and went along with this, then our legacy is tainted as the judges that helped steal a democratically won election. When that didn't work, the pressure campaign still continued with thousands of voter challenges, endless investigations, and sustained right wing attacks on Fulton County election workers from every area of the Republican media ecosystem. I've seen I don't even want to say their names. I've seen so many right wing pundits that has celebrated this. I'll say some. The Babylon Bee. The Babylon Bee, the satirical news site, is praising this as further evidence that Donald Trump won the election and had it ripped from him. From who? Who exactly? All it takes is a dozen people to take over an American election. Really? Is that what we're going with? Nevertheless, Fulton County election officials have projected confidence. Secretaries of state say years of audits and lawsuits have validated the 2020 election as federal scrutiny raises new concerns. The FBI search of Fulton County, Georgia election office sent shockwaves through election offices nationwide that have spent years responding to lawsuits, audits, and investigations driven by President Donald Trump's false claims about the 2020 election. But state officials, many of them gathered this week for a national conference, projected confidence afterward, saying their work has already withstood years of scrutiny following the 2020 election, and they have followed federal and state law. Nevada Secretary of State Cisco Aguilar, a Democrat, said election officials are concerned and upset and believe a certain individual is trying to intimidate us ahead of the 2026 and 2028 elections. At the same time, he said, officials want voters to know they are running safe, secure, and accessible elections with safeguards that are continually reviewed and improved. Callie Jones, a spokesperson for the Arizona Secretary of State's office, said the agency is notifying county election officials about the situation in Georgia, but is not issuing formal guidance. He said the office is preparing in a case of a similar situation were to arise in Arizona and is available, along with legal staff, to assist counties with questions about record retention. She added that Arizona no longer has 2020 ballots because state law requires counties to destroy ballots within 24 months of an election. Pennsylvania election officials were not aware of similar activity taking place in Pennsylvania. A spokesperson for the Department of State said in a statement, emphasizing that the state's 2020 election was free, fair, safe, and secure, with results upheld repeatedly by state and federal courts. So many of these election officials aren't afraid at all. They know that they've already gone through these lawsuits, they have proven themselves to be legitimate, and every audit has lost from the Trump administration that continues to falsely claim that Joe Biden didn't actually win. This is where conspiracies all should fall flat. When you have audit after audit, case after case that all concludes the same evidence, that's not competing ideas of thought. It's not saying that some people are substantiating a lie. Some people actually have the truth that Donald Trump won. Everybody has consensus on this issue. Republican, Democrat, Independent alike. All of them have fully proven in court that these elections are legitimate and certified. Donald Trump is wasting time. But it's more than that. He's trying to commit fraud. One of the craziest photos from this whole ordeal is Tulsi Gabbard at the election center herself. This is wild. The director of national intelligence is personally present at the raid wearing like some crappy spy disguise. I feel like this is what like superheroes wear in like Marvel movies when they're trying to hide their identity. And everybody's like, how the hell did people not know who that person is? That is Tulsi Gabbard. This is not intelligence oversight. She's not doing it from a distance. She's in the election center. This is the nation's top intelligence official on the ground during an election related seizure. This should sound off every alarm bell and red flag in people's minds. Why is she there? She has no reason to be there unless this is a coordinated effort from multiple federal agencies to make Donald Trump feel better about himself and potentially continue to claim false accusations that the 2020 election was stolen. Georgia's not the only state that's being targeted, though. Attorney General Pam Bondi, days before this, demanded Minnesota turn over its voter rolls, along with very sensitive voter data, during an ICE surge and civil unrest in Minneapolis. Bondi's demands mirrors the Department of Justice lawsuits in nearly 24 states, seeking expansive voter data with social security numbers, driver's license information, and registration databases. Critics have warned this has been coming. They have sounded the alarms for democratic erosion, and the immigration enforcement is used as leverage to extract this election data completely unrelated to immigration. Bondi has made this explicit. If you want to stop seeing federal agents terrorize communities in Minneapolis, give us all of your sensitive voter data. These are already settled cases. We know what the votes already say. but we want the data just in case. Maybe we'll manipulate it here and there. Maybe we'll just call it illegitimate. Maybe we'll lose some of the cases that we take. Who knows? Why do they need that? This has never been precedent in American culture. Typically, we have something called a peaceful transition of power, where the person that loses the election does not try to start an insurrection at the Capitol building and spend a 6 year propaganda campaign saying that he actually didn't win. That's usually like the behavior of toddlers or people when they get mad that they lost a game. Trump's using American democracy as his own little playbook. All of this is happening during an election year. Trump has already said a couple of weeks ago we shouldn't even have a midterm election because of how crazy things are right now. He's signaling what he feels about democratic control. He doesn't like it. He wants to remain in power. And part of him being in power is having a Congress that does his bidding. So he doesn't want to lose in the midterms. And when presidents use the Department of Justice and the FBI to target state election systems, all this does is continue to legitimize false narratives and it suppresses turnout, especially in communities that are targeted by ICE, where he's trying to use these voter roles as leverage to stop the terrorizing of these communities. All of this is dangerous. And it is normalizing the idea that losing elections is grounds for criminal investigation. People can't be suspect because they vote against people in positions of power. And if people don't leave power peacefully when they have lost, then democracy is already over.